Okay, so this must be like part 5 or 4. Okay. So I think I made a folder for Monaleris. Oh, this is gonna be so overwhelming. All right, let's just look at it. Let's just see what happens.
The majority of these college students are here on a loan. They are studying something unbelievably stupid. They are basically being built for money. They have no idea. It's the next cool thing to do. The average person, I think, at these protests is the kid that isn't cool or good looking enough to be invited to a house party. So because they're not invited to a house party.
Oh my gosh. All right. Let's make this coffee a little Irish. And you know what? Once we figure out Monaleris, it'll be less overwhelming. At least we made major progress in our life. There was a time where, I mean, that guy Shopes, I mean, he just looks like a douchebag, right? So a lot of people are going to be willing to just write that off just because he acts like, just sounds like a prick. But we don't want to write people off for that reason. So let's find out some real things, and that's not a reason that I write people off. And so I'd be like, is he right? Is he right? But at least now I know we're human brains. So I mustn't be surprised when we say crazy things. And the way I like to remind myself of that, the easiest way, quickest way, is, oh yeah, there are people that believe in a God. Okay. All right, let's if I can get into it. First thing that came to mind as I was watching this. So the esek here, of course, is Israel v. Palestine. That could be formulated more precisely, but whatever. His kess, we can infer, is that Israel needs support and Palestine. So his kess is Israel, Palestine. Okay. That's not actually super useful. So we're gonna try to find some kesses that we can actually like study or formulate clearly, where it's something that the mind can actually handle, a question that we can answer, not just good or bad. So, but anyway, something that came to mind was the bet to tav ratio. Bet to tav ratio can actually be wrong in, well, two ways. It can be too high on either side. So if you've got a 10 to 1, wait, no, if you've got a 10 to 1, if you said, here are a whole bunch of things that lead to this, then that's quite good, isn't it? Hold on, let me watch that again.
They make their own, which is out here, which is why what happens when they summon these people with a flyer, 10,000 of them show up. These are
majority of these college students honestly know exactly what they're protesting for.
the majority.
Okay, the original esek is, hey, do they know what they're protesting for? Okay, so your first thought when you hear that should be, the only way to know that is to ask them, to do some kind of an experiment, a study. At random, ask 100 of them, what are you protesting for? And compare that, I don't know, to their, I don't know, what is that question? I don't know. I don't know how you would, okay, but this guy seems to have an answer. And we put in our notes that do they have access to the information? Right off the bat, this guy hasn't been talking to, not really. I mean, he's gone and antagonized, I would guess, and he says that in the video. But he doesn't have access to, do they know what they're protesting for? I know these are just, because I don't know, are these bets or tabs that he's giving? He said they're studying something unbelievably stupid. But what is your evidence for that? So it sounds like you're saying, well, if they're studying X, then they're studying something unbelievably stupid. And so you're just affirming that they're studying something unbelievably stupid. But you didn't even say, oh, they're studying this, that, and the other. I guess there's always a more fundamental bet. Every bet is a tav. Except for like experimental results. So, right, so the question is how cup it is. All right, so you've got reality here. This is reality. Okay? That's reality. That's the ultimate bet. The you know what I'm trying to say. Not the primordial, not the axiomatic, the base bet, bro. Okay? I don't know, and if blank is true, or I guess the base bet is our representation of it. So an experimental result. We measured the tree. The tree has a height. We measured it 10 meters high. Okay. Then that's your starting point. If it's 10 meters high, then blah, blah, blah. And by the way, you always have another thing as well. It's always two things, which is this is your objectives. So reality, values, or goals. Okay. Okay, so we've got a representation based on an experiment, some data, and we've got this. And then we've got the linguistic representation of this. But this also exists in us. Reality doesn't exist in us. But so I feel like I should move this over a bit. But anyway. So our representation. Okay. And then the idea is like lily pads to go from this to the ultimate tab, which is the conclusion, the belief, Okay. So I feel like right off the bat, can't we evaluate where the person is, like how many degrees separated they are from that somehow? Like, and then of course there's still the question of we should disqualify auditors just because we don't have time to listen to everybody. Not that auditors are never saying anything true, but even if they're saying something true, or they're using a bunch of stuff that doesn't not make that thing true, and it's just a more exhausting process for you to find the truth in what they're saying. So you might as well just try to find people that are actually, giving you a better sequence, something that you can actually properly evaluate. Now remember, auditors. All right, look, the brain in general does not truly go from this to this to this to this to get to a conclusion. Okay, a couple of things in here trigger some conclusion, and then the brain goes and identifies what could lead to that conclusion and uses that as justification. But even though actually it selected some bad stuff that doesn't lead to that conclusion, you understand what I'm saying? Do you understand what I'm saying? I think if you know, you know. Okay. So remember, auditors, they can be coming from this track. you know, because they kind of start here, basically. They have some reaction to some of the information. They don't have a good interpretation of it. They have some conclusion, and they pick what works for this. And then, so they're not on this path of coming from a reality and a sense of coherent values. They're coming from this, basically. And then from here, using things that are meant to lead back to this. And that's a really useful thing to identify off the bat. So how can you identify it? Well, basically just how much they mention evidence. Yeah, I don't think that we need to invent a word for evidence. But give me a second. Let me think about that a second, because is evidence too specific of a word? If they refer to, aren't there useful things that they could refer to that are not evidence but are still elements that you know we want to see? Well, for instance, if they list, all right, so the question is, we need something like the evidence to claim ratio. Or maybe the first question you ask yourself is, how many claims are made that show? And then you have to ask yourself, well, does this person have better access to evidence than I do? By the way, this is not for people who are just looking for fuel for their Ajot department, how to see errors in what other people are saying, because you have to have a certain level of humility to, you know, give the person the benefit of the doubt as much as possible. I got to think more.